FESSUD project, that is on financialisation, economy, society and sustainable development, is investigating the growth and impact of the financial sector, the causes of the financial crisis, and looking for policies to address many of these issues. And in this work we have been receiving great support from our members of our Scientific Advisory Committee and our stakeholder group, and they have been attending our conference here in Amsterdam, and we're taking this opportunity to talk to one of the members of those groups, Professor Charles Goodhart, to ask him about his experiences from his work on the financial sector. He is very well known as an expert on banking and monetary policy from his work at the Bank of England over many years, and more recently his membership of the Monetary Policy Committee at the Bank of England, and now his continuing work on regulation and on the financial sector. So we're going to be now asking him some questions and discussing with him some of these issues.
Professor Goodhart, may I start with probably a quite easy question, but also maybe challenging. What did you learn from the financial crisis and the policy response that followed?
I think we all learned a lot. When the crisis began, there was a lot of developments in the financial system that I simply had not been aware of. The SIVs and the SPEs and the CDOs, all these acronyms that we didn't understand at the moment. The special purpose entities, the structured investment vehicles, the collateralized debt obligations, just to describe those acronyms that I spoke about. I hadn't been aware about how complex some of the financial system had become, and I certainly found that I needed to learn about it. And I think that a lot of people were unaware about the degree to which the financial system had developed, had become over-leveraged, and had become fragile. And at the time, even the main central bankers, I don't think, around the world, were fully aware of the overall fragility of the system and what a small equity base the whole financial system was constructed around.
So from what you were saying, it looks like there is a problem in the academic world between the macroeconomists and people working more on finance. Are you optimistic about the possibility of a convergence between these two different fields, or you think that it's still very premature to say where we are going?
Well, my appreciation of the sort of macroeconomic mainstream is that they have become aware, not surprisingly, that there are problems with the financial system. But where they're at the moment is that they're building in credit risk premia and interest rate premia into their models of corporates. Where they have not got to is looking at the crises that affect the financial system itself. And in the main models that the mainstream are producing, there is still no full awareness that the financial system itself can go down. And the kind of financial frictions they have, Bernanke, Gertler, and all the rest of them, on occasions where you get some difficulties and the financial frictions occur and the businesses find it harder and more expensive to borrow, and that makes the system worse. Now that's part of the truth, but it's not the whole truth, because the really important crises and the really important failures have all been within the financial sector itself, and that they have not yet built into any of their models.
Now, as you know, Professor Goodhart, FESSUD is a multidisciplinary pluralistic project, and the aim is to bring together social science, not only economics, And do you think that pluralistic, multidisciplinary approach may help to solve some of the problems you just discussed?
Yes, ein studies, for example, of the role and functions of money. Ein anthropologists and archaeologists, to take two, and I think sociologists as well, have played a major role. And they have many insights. And again, one of the main, I think, failings of the modern mainstream is that they treat individuals as atomistic. And it's not only the rational expectation, but they're all on their own. Now, and I've always thought that the main constraint on human beings is actually time, not wealth, because we had infinite time. We could work an infinite amount of time and get an infinite amount of money, but we don't. And that means that we're all desperately short of time. And since we're desperately short of time, actually, most of our opinions and most of our ideas do not come from some kind of econometric assessment of the historical data. It comes from actually talking to each other. So it is actually rational for us not to try and work everything out from first principles for ourselves. It's rational in most cases to go to people who we think are sensible, intelligent, able, and ask them. So there's an inevitable amount of herding, of cascades of information, of changes of view. And in many cases, I think that economists are really trying to sell a view about how the system works. And we're not so much, and we can't be scientists in the sense that we can't do controlled experiments. And I've always wanted to have a world in which I could maybe, shall we say, give everybody who lives in Scotland £2,000 more and see what the hell happens. But I'm not allowed to do that. And not only can't we do controlled experiments, but if we did a controlled experiment, it wouldn't stick because people learn from what's happened before. And so their behavior changes according to their own experience.
Goodhart's law.
Yeah, exactly. So nothing ever remains stable. It is an evolutionary dynamic system with interactions between sort of ideas and institutions and events, and that leads to changes in ideas. And the whole thing evolves like that, whereas the mainstream still think in terms effectively as static equilibria. And static equilibria are not where we're at. And also the mainstream takes institutions as given and doesn't realize that markets depend critically on the regulatory structure of the rules, many times not rules in the sense they're laid out by the EU or the Basel Committee or anything. It's rules that the markets themselves have adopted for their own purposes. And you can't actually study a market without knowing how that market is organized, what the rules of the game are. And these rules are continually changing as events change and ideas change. It's a very complicated world out there. And if you try and reduce it to too simple a static equilibrium, you're actually going to get into a mess.